Music and Booze with Mo is produced and distributed by EatsDrinksTV, a service of the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and First Reel Entertainment, and is available wherever fine podcasts can be heard. The Center for Culinary Culture, telling the story of food and drink, one taste at a time. Welcome to Music and Booze with Mo. I'm Mo Herms, and I've worked in the music industry most of my life, so have met some pretty amazing musicians over the years. I also love a good cocktail, and I've encountered some really interesting bartenders as well. It seems that there's a lot of crossover, so when I can, I like to talk to musicians and bartenders about music and booze. Join us at the bar, won't you? Music and Booze with Mo is brought to you by Barkeeper, a head shop for cocktail lovers, located at 614 North Hoover Street in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. Stop by for barware, vintage glassware, a carefully curated collection of spirits, and one of the most impressive selections of bitters anywhere. Follow them on Instagram and Facebook for information regarding spirits tastings. That's barkeepersilverlake.com, and also in the Virgil Village neighborhood of Silver Lake, Los Angeles. I'm so excited to get to share with you an interview I got to do with Dave Wondrich, someone I had been hoping to chat with for a while. We have some mutual friends, but it still took time to coordinate this little talk. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as we started, my recorder broke. So we used my phone. It's going to sound a little bit different, but that doesn't mean the stories are any less exciting. I long knew that Dave was a musician because I've heard him chat about it in the past, so we dive deep into that, the rock and roll days of Dave Wondrich, and then he started doing music journalism, and that took him to spirits historian, all of the above, the stuff you probably know him for. So we're going to talk about that journey. You know, he's a professor too. Kind of figures, though. Also, right now, we're going to listen to a track from his band. Yes, his band that he almost got signed onto a label in LA with, called A Blind Dog Stares. This is a track called The Roof Comes Down.
I'm David Wondrich. I'm a drinks historian, cocktail historian, spirits, and I was drinks columnist for Esquire for 17 years. Best job I've ever had, but I've been working my way down ever since. But I write books mostly, and do like weird little history projects, and give talks, and keep pretty busy. But I'm not traveling quite as much as I used to.
Well, you do podcasts too, or at least you dabble in podcasts.
Yeah, I did. I podcasted quite a bit.
Yes, and I think because I joke around as I get older, I'm still listening to music, but I find myself listening to podcasts a lot. So I listen to you guys, and that's when I started hearing you talk about your rock and roll days as well.
Yeah, there's that too.
So what came first, the rock and roll or the booze?
Well, I started playing bass in punk bands in the great punk explosion of the late 70s. And I played in bands in New York City starting in 1979. None of them ever got famous, but
that was a time to be doing it.
Oh yeah, and I played around quite a bit. Well, actually, 1975 was the time to be doing it.
Was it?
Because that's when you got famous.
Oh well, I guess in '79 that's when LA was probably just picking up.
Yeah, LA was just picking up, but I wasn't in LA. I was in New York.
Yeah.
So, and New York, it was already a well-known thing, but it was still fun. And then I ended up playing in all kinds of stuff, gay cabaret acts, anything, it was a really weird and fun time. I was in the house band at Club 57 on St. Mark's Place for a while, which was just the wildest, absolutely most insane place. And I was a, fairly naive suburban kid, but when I got into all this stuff, and, I came out a little better experienced. But and then I played in rock bands and toured mostly with my band, A Blind Dog Stares. That it wasn't my name. I didn't choose that name.
Picking a name. When I talk to people, I talk to musicians all the time who are bartenders, and when you talk about choosing a band name, there's so much agony, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's fighting about it. They're pulling things out of a hat and going, no.
I was spared the agony because I was the replacement bass player. So they already had a name.
But I hear people who try to name their cocktails.
Yeah.
And they go through similar struggles.
Oh yeah. Or songs,
Names,
Anytime you got to come up with names, it takes like a certain talent and a certain amount of work.
Well, what made you choose the bass?
Easy. I had a friend who had played it, and I always liked it. And it turns out bass was really fun to play because as long as I was playing in a band.
Yeah. Because
you jump up and down a lot, and you've got the drums, and if you've got a good drummer, the two of you can just drive shit into orbit, and that was the fun part, bang, 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 and the bass is loud, and it doesn't have the same function on record, but live it's what you feel.
Well, okay.
You make people move their bodies.
I won't say my first crush in the music world was Sean Cassidy because I was a girl, right? And all for the bubblegum. Little did I know it was Neil Diamond and Eric Carmen writing that stuff. So later I'm like, that's why I like that music. Okay. But then it was John Taylor from Duran Duran.
Okay.
And so, fell for the bass player. And I was young and I didn't want it just to be purely because I was a girl that thought he was cute. Right. I wanted to figure out what he was playing. And I tried playing guitar as a girl and, kind of came and went. But I started listening to music and tuning out instruments and kind of tuning in instruments. And that made me realize just how important the bass is. So I always get mad when people make fun of bass, all the bass jokes, all the drummer jokes.
When I was 16, I had a friend who was very, very into Funkadelic. And that was not really acceptable in my white suburban high school, but he was a black kid from Buffalo, and I met him. I went away for boarding school for a year, and we listened to a lot of Bootsy's Rubber Band and Funkadelic, so I also had that. It was I was like... Bass
is undeniable, and you said, live, you feel it. Literally...
Oh, yeah. No,
it's shaking your internal organs.
It's what moves people like physically, around.
It's involuntary.
It is. And so that was the fun part of playing the bass is just getting the people moving. So
I think people forget, you're saying, oh, it was punk band and punk was so chaotic.
Yeah, but it was also exciting.
Yes, it was. But thinking, I think most people default when they're thinking of bass, they're thinking of funk. They're thinking of dance stuff. They're thinking of something groovy. But it's in there. You have these Fugazi.
Oh my God! Dee Dee Ramone was one of the greatest bass players who ever lived.
See,
you tried doing what he did. 1, 2, 3, 4 at 200 miles an hour for an hour. No nonstop.
My brother plays bass, and I remember him saying there were some songs he tried to learn. He's like, it broke my hand.
Yeah,
trying to learn some of these songs.
No, it's just physically hard what he did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only 5 or 6 notes, but it doesn't matter. It's
when you're doing it 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, the right hand is doing stuff that other people could not do.
It's essentially having a spasm to make that happen.
Yeah. So that was cool though. That was fun. But eventually I reached I turned 25 and I looked around and I realized that if you're not a rock and roll star by the time you're 25, you're probably never going to be a rock and roll star.
That's a very mature thought.
Every once in a while I get one. and so I did come up with one, and I realized that that's actually pretty accurate. And I wasn't in it to be a musician. I have not a very good ear for music. I could come up with a good bass line and stuff, but I couldn't listen to a whole complicated piece of music and play it off the bat.
But you were playing punk.
Well, I was also
There's a lot of leeway there.
Yeah, but I was also playing all kinds of New York City type music.
Yeah.
Like funk stuff and cabaret and
the
things
cabaret
that.
stuff. Okay.
Well, it was
give
punk rock, underground drag queen cabaret, but at the Pyramid Club.
I was going to say, because there was such a scene late 70s,
early 80s. I was part of that scene in a very small way because I was the bass player for Frankie Lyman's nephew, and Frankie Lyman's nephew, Gerard Little, was one of the loveliest people I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
And he was a fantastic drag queen who made his own ball gowns out of garbage bags, and he could just lay them out and cut them. He would sketch with chalk and cut instantly, and these things had volume and drape and all this stuff. He was very talented.
That is ridiculous.
He was very talented, very smart, charismatic, and also very sweet. Along also John Sex, another famous East Village celebrity whose band I played in, also very sweet, but he lived up to his name. He was wickedly charismatic in a really disturbing way. And so there were all these characters in the East Village, And so I played part of that scene, and then I went and joined kind of a more college band.
Yeah.
And toured, and we toured on a shoestring.
I was going to say, were these the tours where somebody's got to sleep on the floor? And
all the time.
Everyone's sharing food
I learned
at
to
Denny's.
sleep on the roof of the equipment trailer outside because the animals couldn't reach me, and it was flexy, and I didn't have anybody farting on me.
And you were also in your 20s?
Yeah. I was 23.
I remember the first time I went to New Orleans, staying in some hostel, and it was Mardi Gras and post Mardi Gras time, but there wasn't. They didn't have reservations for the whole time I was going to be there.
No.
I had 2 nights and maybe 2 nights at the end. So I'm I'll figure something out in between, right? Because I was young enough. Who cares?
Who cares? You'll figure it out.
There was another woman, a single woman who was traveling alone.
Yeah.
She and I, boom, we just connected immediately. So I went back with her, stayed in the same place, but just slept under her bunk. So I was didn't even think twice about it.
No.
We would show up hammered. I'd just roll onto the floor under her bunk.
Yeah. I slept on numerous floors. One club refused to pay us, so he said he'd in maybe Greensboro, someplace like that, down in the south, and the guy said Raleigh, and the guy said, well, I'll come back tomorrow and pay you, and he didn't come back. But he said, in the meanwhile, we said we can't get into a motel unless and he said, well, you could sleep in the club.
Really?
So we did. And he didn't come back, so we took a garbage can of beer.
I was going to say, did he leave all the booze there?
Well, there was nothing to steal. He knew. There was beer, and
so that was his MO,
and there
apparently.
was a full face gas mask that we used later on stage. That became part of our stage show. So, I mean,
Oh my God.
it
That's
was touring
amazing.
like this was wild. I mean, we'd be driving through like western Nebraska, and it'd be 95 degrees out, and there'd be a little motel with a pool out front. We'd just pull in, run out of the van, and into the pool, and the guy would come out and start yelling, and we'd be already out and back in the van. And we're lucky we didn't get shot, but we do like pool raids. We did all kinds of stuff.
That's, again, so punk rock. But,
Well, it was,
but that's just like broke bands.
That's what you do.
To this day, that's how broke bands do it.
I know. It's how it works.
My heart bleeds for bands today because it's not as easy now to get away with that kind of stuff.
No, it's much harder, and
you could do that up in
there was
like
a lot of
2000s,
freedom. We had a lot of freedom,
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be like in a bar on a back highway in Nevada at dawn, drinking scotch and soda after pulling a 6
scotch
6 hour.
And soda. You were a fancy band.
Yeah, well, I was into the drinks.
You were already, yes.
Yeah, my ambition was to have a billboard on Sunset Strip endorsing Durkee's cocktail onions. I'm not kidding. I had my outfit planned out.
Oh, I absolutely believe you.
Yeah. I mean, this was, I drank
Was it going to be like an
Gibsons.
Orson Welles type of thing?
No, I was going to be more like going for the kind of the Jean-Paul Belmondo thing.
Oh, nice.
Like a little French kind of Caribbean outfit.
So we can put this by the Chateau Marmont. Because
Exactly.
Sort of at the start of the strip for you.
And just looking, a little sportif and saying, for I always insist on Durkees in my Gibson. So that was really my plan, and unfortunately that didn't work out. And I finally I played in bands in New York for a bit when I got back, but not seriously. And when they started getting serious, I went to grad school.
Was the grad school the decision like, okay, bands are not going to be my future?
Yeah,
so
once I was in that, I was like, I found something that was interesting to me,
which was
I did comparative literature, and I was mostly doing Latin. And stuff in Latin. And,
in Latin?
Yeah, I grew up speaking Italian, so Latin's not so hard.
Oh, my mother, South America, they speak Latin in church, good old Catholics.
Yeah.
There we go with the Latin.
No, but I
and it's such a foundation for so many
Latin
other things.
pretty quick, and I was mostly just interested in it because I'd spent a lot of time in Italy, the homeland of the Roman Empire. As a kid, I'd spent a great deal of time there. So because my father was Italian, so
I'm sure later when you went back to Italy, it was kind of different purposes. Then you go out there, you start exploring cocktail culture, which has been there.
Well, I always kind of we always
your family already entertained.
Well, no, Karen, my wife and I, even in 1990, we went on a 2-month tour of Europe and spent a lot of time in cocktail bars.
Yeah.
Even then, in Italy, there were places where you could get like a real daiquiri, and there were drinks that we'd only heard of that places were perfectly prepared to make.
That's so interesting. I mean, I shouldn't say interesting. The States had done it once.
Yeah.
And
it had been
they just kind of let it go.
Yeah, it was very much unfashionable in 1990.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could get a good martini at places, but that was all they did,
So would you say then for you, because you've been tuned in to good cocktail culture
for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time. I mean, that's pretty early by New York standards.
Yeah, and I basically spent a lot of time in old man bars in New York when I was a punk because those were very cheap. And I learned very early on that if you order a woo-woo or an Alabama Slammer, they will look at you like they needed to scrape you off their shoe. What the fuck are you doing here? And if you ordered a dry martini, they'd roll their eyes a little bit, but they'd make
But they'd do it.
Yeah, and they'd make it just fine. So they think, all right, this weirdo's weird dressed kid, at least he knows, at least it's something I know how to make. I don't got to learn no new drinks for this.
Were you coming in there all punked out and,
of course,
and getting your Gibsons?
Yeah, of course. We all had our outfits.
Were your bandmates also on board with you for this thing, or were they going
not as much.
They're just getting a beer and a shot.
Not as much. I was more into the martinis than most of them. But
so then, when you went on tour, were you the one getting the bottle of scotch and being like, come on, guys.
Sometimes. No, we all agreed on the the power of the usefulness of drinks. But I mean, I'm not saying that it was always scotch. I drank plenty of vodka. I drank. I didn't drink a lot of like the really crappy like schnapps or anything.
Well,
like
as we
that.
mentioned before, at this time in our lives, doing music, it was not something that was going to pay the bills.
No.
So you're living on the cheap.
Well, we were
and
trying.
You're figuring out how to make
we
it
were
work.
trying to make it pay the bills. we were trying to get signed. That was our whole strategy.
Well, you were saying that's why you wound up in LA.
Yeah, I moved to LA. We had a whole like court the record company strategy that almost
so
worked.
Sorry.
Well, it came so close, but
What year was this again?
This was 1983 when they weren't signing anybody.
But you had like Stiff and you had Slash.
Well, yeah, but
you had IRS.
not in America. We didn't.
Oh yeah, those are all English, aren't they?
Yeah,
yeah. I'm like, what were the American?
Yeah, no.
ones?
We did demos for Chrysalis. We did demos for A&M. There was one more, and they paid for it. They like auditioned us all the way up to the top of the company, and then like Chrysalis chose a heavy metal band instead of us. And they lost
Their
a lot
hair
of
was
money.
bigger than yours.
Yeah,
they wore more lipstick
but
than you.
that was it. That's what they were signing in the fall of 1984.
Yeah,
it was one band.
No, 84 was like, I mean, okay, we lived through this. 84 was like you had to wear makeup.
Yeah, also
it was either metal or new wave.
Yeah, and they really had been burned so badly by new wave that they were very, very reluctant to spend money. It was very talk dirty to me. Yeah, but it was like they really didn't want to spend money. They were like, we're gonna get this right.
Yeah,
we're not gonna like throw money out to these losers. We're gonna find Armored Saint, and they're gonna make us all the money in the world. And unfortunately, Armored Saint didn't make them all the money in the world.
Well, what was your band like? We didn't even talk about like you played with so many bands, but this band, the one that you took all the way to LA,
kind of a twangy guitar, driving bass and drums, and I can play them for you.
Pull it up on your phone. I would love to hear it.
I got a CD.
If you send me a track, I will plug it in here.
All right, I'll send you a track.
You can send me the whole thing. I would love to hear it.
I'll send you a track.
So if you, at that time, what would your dream bill have been for yourself?
For...
who would you want to have played with?
Played with?
Yeah, with that band. Like, who do you think would have been like a great bill?
Well, I didn't like the other bands we sounded like,
Oh,
which
really?
was like U2 and like... Rain Parade and
so we're talking early U2, like boy U2,
yeah.
Before
I didn't really
got his sunglasses
on.
on.
I didn't really care for much of that, but I liked who did I like? I mostly liked all of us. We were kind of like into bands like the Jefferson Airplane and stuff like that.
Really? So you guys were playing like punk-ish, but
psychedelic
like
punk.
Oh,
yeah.
You were not of your time, I think.
Well, we were. There were other bands doing that too.
Well, there was kind of that psychedelic.
Yeah, there was Dream Syndicate.
I'm thinking Dream Syndicate, of course.
We were a little more driving than they were. We weren't so dreamy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was like kind of Lloyd Cole at that time. And
there was a bunch of stuff.
It was the melodic. It was melodic, and I thought it leaned a little more.
Some
poppy.
of the bands that I shared bills with were like. Faith No More opened for us once.
Oh yeah, in the early days.
In the really early days.
Really early.
And then they got immensely bigger as they deserved because they were a good band. The Red Hot Chili Peppers before they had that name.
So, because I grew up in Southern California. I remember seeing the Red Hot Chili Peppers at a one-screen theater in my hometown, which was a church formerly. The theater. It's still running today. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm like, they didn't have any tattoos then. And they were surfers on heroin who wore socks on their dicks. That was it. That's how as far as they'd gotten at that point.
I knew like pre-Henry Rollins Black Flag. I played in an all-star band at the Music Machine with a couple of those guys.
Yeah.
I won't beat you up, and I won't push you around. 'Cause if I do that, the cops will get me for doing it. I wanna go and have some fun, go where the action is. But who the hell are you to tell me who my friends are? Say I'll never leave you, no, I'll never leave you. Stop the end, no, it's not the end.
fun.
There was all kinds of LA bands.
You're like, I'm living off Hokey Dog, but I'm having a good time.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was
I think
different.
it's, I think a lot of people sell themselves short, but the fact that you actually were auditioning, quote, for these labels.
Yeah, that was rare.
That's huge.
That was rare at the
happen.
time. No, it really wasn't happening.
So you guys must have been better than you're like letting on.
we weren't bad. We had our moments.
And what was that band called?
It was called A Blind Dog Stares.
That's that one.
That was a problem. I'm sure if we'd gotten a contract, we would have changed it.
I was going to say, they bring in their marketing.
Yeah, I don't think
it is still LA.
but we had we had a stage show with film and lights, and our guitar player was a filmmaker, and so you had some stuff. Yeah, we had a whole thing going on. Yeah, and we'd come out on stage. We got smoke machines and
then a crazy film in the background.
Yeah, and then these like low down par lights. So we'd be silhouetted, and
so LA
our guitar player, who was extremely skinny, had a jet pilot's inflatable pants that made him look like a bug, and huge sunglasses. We had all this crazy shit.
So you guys were in LA for what, like a year?
A year, and then we were.
Then nothing happened.
No, I quit. I quit about halfway through, and.
And did you quit just because you were like, we're not going anywhere?
I couldn't take it anymore.
I mean, well, you're a writer for a living, and I'm someone who at one point I thought I would be a writer. And I remember my mom was like, when are you going to write this book? When are you going to do this? And my thought was, I need to know where my next paycheck is coming from. So I'm not going to pursue that. So you went band to writer?
Well, no, I went band to, I was paralegal for a while. I did, I worked all kinds of jobs, but, and then, but then, I was I finished my undergraduate degree after that, which I had quit to go,
to be a band guy.
Yeah, to go,
to go tour,
exactly.
be a musician.
I was in
in
the East Village in New York. I mean,
of
it
course.
was exciting. But anyway, and then I went straight into grad school and ended up getting a PhD in comp lit. So that took a number of years.
Yeah,
and
that's nothing to sneeze at, as they say. That's very impressive.
That was a lot of work, but there were no jobs really at the time.
I was going to say that is the kind of job where you become a professor.
Yeah, and I was.
I didn't know that you actually became a professor.
I was a tenure track English professor for 4.5 years.
Wow.
And it was the worst job I ever had. It was terrible. It was absolutely awful. I hated it.
So did somewhere in there you were just like, okay, listen, I've been a fan of actual cocktails for quite some time.
Well, no, it didn't happen quite like that. What happened was I started writing about music, and at that point I was very bitter about the music business and rock music in general, and I had gotten into very early jazz, which seemed like a perfect compromise to me because it had a ton of energy and it was like rock and roll, but it wasn't anything I had to hear on the radio, and it wasn't. The everybody involved.
When you say very early jazz, where are you?
I'm talking like
old school New Orleans, like 30s.
Old school New Orleans 30s.
Which artists were jumping out at you?
Yeah, like Jelly Roll Morton was the greatest. Louis Armstrong, Sidney Bechet.
Who, of course, as you know, they were the punks of their time.
Yeah, they were.
This stuff was
it was
completely.
It was shocking.
Yes.
Yeah. and you hear it. You listen to it and you hear it.
You do. When I mentioned to you that I did radio for 10 years, and I had a colleague who we followed each other. He had the show before me, and at some point we realized we both loved early blues, which was the really raunchy, filthy.
I had been into that from high school. So,
innuendo
so laden. That's what got me towards the jazz stuff is like, I was like, what else is there?
We used to love to just do we'd interlap our shows. I'd come in when his was just about to end and mine was to start, and we'd do an hour just playing that.
Oh, see, that's the most fun.
It was so fun. And especially because we also like to be like, fuck the FCC with that, because FCC has very strict rules about innuendo.
Oh, yeah.
But they really only pay attention if it's like, I don't know, like Lil' Kim or now today. Anyone.
Yeah, but this stuff, they hear historic music and they completely they don't listen to it.
They don't want to mess with it.
They don't even hear it.
Some woman saying, back your car into my garage. It's like, what?
No. They don't even think about that.
I love that lured you in and you started writing about that.
Yeah, so I started writing about that and kind of writing about it in a punky rock criticism sort of way.
Oh, awesome.
And that got me a gig at the Village Voice.
Oh, cool.
So I was writing about that for the Village Voice all the while I was, finishing my PhD and starting to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a gig at the Sunday New York Times writing kind of bigger think pieces on this stuff. And I did that a little, and then my friend calls me up at the last week of 1999 and says, I got a weird project for you. He was the director of new media for Hearst magazines, and they had just appointed a new media director because everybody suddenly needed websites.
Yeah, I was going to say
the magazines.
About the time.
It was brand new. And he said, well, Esquire has this old drink book that they want to put online, and I know you like cocktails, and can you edit this for the website? And I'm like, no, I'm far too busy. I had a small child at home and a professor job, and I can't do
You're
that.
like, I'm an adult.
No, it was more like, yeah, nice try. But then he goes, well, it pays. And I was like, well, what does it pay? It was, well, $3,000 for a junior professor. That was money.
Wow.
So I was like, okay.
Both of my parents were high school and college.
Yeah.
My mom was a college professor.
Oh, yeah. So,
on the lower end, yeah.
Yeah, it's that was like, okay.
Scholastic is not really rewarded.
No, it's not.
So wow.
So I did that job, and it worked out, and that got me a column at Esquire's website, which was amusing, and a drink of the week column, and that led me to the magazine, and then I became the columnist for the magazine, and this was over the course of a year and a half.
Wow.
Then I did Esquire's. I said we should do another drink book because you used to do them all the time, and.
When you used to do them, when was that, though?
Well, the last one was 1984.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And it was terrible.
Because it was 1984.
Then there was a 1971 one that was weird, but not interesting, but very weird. It was written by a blind gourmand who mostly focused on seduction and the drinks for seduction.
I kind of want to see that.
Yeah, it's a very weird book.
I would bet you
And then they had one in the early 60s, one in the mid 50s, a really big one, and one in the late 40s, and pamphlets before that. And I had kind of researched this, and so David Granger, the editor, said, yeah, sure, let's do it. Wow. And so I'm writing a book on cocktails. And I was writing a book on music at the same time, on sort of the birth of hot music in America and dealing with minstrelsy and all that kind of stuff. And that was a weird book, but I did the Esquire book first, and then I did that one. And then
it was
a couple years later, I published Imbibe, a biography of Jerry Thomas, with commentary on all his drinks. Originally, because I was trained well trained in classical scholarship, I wanted to write a commentary on his drinks, like they had commentaries on classical poems, where you just explain everything for the reader.
Yeah,
it's like a reference book. But I couldn't really do that. I had to put a lot more shit in there, and I had to put in a biography and editorial comment, and I had to bring in other drinks from the period, and,
so it became much more.
And so anyway, that book did very well.
I was that book kind of broke you, basically. I mean,
it did, and then I after that I had a career. I'd already started teaching with. I'd already founded bar school with four other maniacs, beverage alcohol resource we called it, and we went around. First we had courses in New York.
And what year did the book come out?
The book came out in 2007.
And so that was coinciding with the Renaissance here.
That was right when the cocktail revolution really broke.
And it was here in New York first.
Yeah, it was here in New York. It even 2006.
Yeah,
it was already fully
it was happening.
It was happening. 2007, it was really happening.
And then your book appeared.
Yeah, and then elsewhere in the country, it was San Francisco already had a good shot of it, but not a lot of other places. you know, and after, by like 2008, 2009, it was going strong. So
yeah, it was really, I lived in the Bay Area. I left there in 2001, but my brother had stayed. So I was up there every couple of months, and we're foodie, drinking nerds and music nerds. So where he lived, it's like we lived near the Mission. We were in Noe Valley.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff.
All this stuff, and we're just like, we can just pop over to the Tenderloin for bourbon and branch, which was kind of the
there's bourbon and branch. There was absinthe. There were
these places.
There were a number of places.
So all that stuff was starting to happen over there.
And it was very exciting.
It was very exciting.
San Francisco
but you were
was
here,
good.
like in the like.
Oh, here it was really. I mean, you had like Pegu Club. There was no more magnificent bar. Like when you walked in there, you were like, "Oh my God!"
I was heartbroken when that place closed. I mean, I understand, but I was heartbroken.
Yeah, so everybody
and everyone who bartended, that first team, they all went on to amazing things.
They all became stars.
So, but you were part of that because your book came out.
Yeah, also
during that
Audrey
time.
and I went to high school together. So.
Oh, shut up!
Yeah. So we
Go figure.
We didn't know each other in high school, but
then there was a reconnection.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah. It was a big high school, but.
So now you found yourself as a, I don't know, are you an elder statesman of cocktail these days?
At this point, I mean, I don't know, but that probably.
You have such a history, though, and especially in the history of doing cocktails. And as you mentioned, you're invited out to do, to teach the layman about the past. The most recent thing I saw you do was at the Huki Lau. You guys did the Asian...
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called.
Asian bartenders.
It was basically Asian bartenders.
Yeah.
And since I love tiki and I love the tropical drinks and everything, I loved seeing this and did not know that one Trader Vic's guy got murdered at some point.
Oh, yeah. No, that was, Don the Beachcomber guy.
Oh, Don the Beachcomber. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting my early starts.
But I mean, that was, there was a real lot there, you know?
Yeah.
And those people have never been talked about.
No, not at all.
And they were very important, and like they were key players.
So as you continued writing after Imbibe, like what kind of stuff? Like I feel like the last thing that came out was that encyclopedia.
Yeah, a lot of stuff went into that, though.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, there's
massive.
a lot of.
This is an old school encyclopedia. It's like 1,000 pages of so much amazing information.
My main obsession these days is like lives of bartenders of the past and trying to reconstruct as much as I can their biographies because bartenders don't leave books behind.
No.
They occasionally leave...
Especially those early ones where everything was kept very secret.
Yeah.
They had to keep the recipes secret. They
or, they wrote like these really enigmatic books of just... it would just be the recipes with nothing about them or who they were. And I've been trying as much as possible to recover at least basic biographical details on some of these important bartenders and trying to piece together a more accurate history of bartending and cocktail bartending because so many people got robbed of the credit they deserved.
Yeah.
And we attribute stuff to like either the wrong people or to nobody. And these are people who actually went in and made a big difference. And I want to really recover them so that when we talk about the history of bartending, we've got names and dates, and we could say, well, Ciro Capozzi in Monte Carlo is really the one who got the English upper classes drinking cocktails, which led to the Savoy Bar, and you could kind of trace it back to
build that map.
Yeah, and you can build that map and those connections, and that stuff had all been like forgotten or erased.
I think you're probably fortunate in that time has passed, but it hasn't been like a century or two.
Yeah.
So it was possible to kind of find some of this stuff.
Some of this stuff is
I'm sure some of it's tricky.
Some of it's irrecoverable, know. It never got recorded. These people never got
No, because
it
was like a neighborhood thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and this, for the podcast, I've mentioned many times, I'm a partner in a bar in LA, and it's a female-owned and operated bar. It's one of 7 female-owned and operated bar in all of LA County, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge county.
It's a huge county.
But I am certain there are Abuelas on street corners who don't care about us as hipster kids with our cool tropical bar. And they've just been doing their thing for the last 40 years.
They've been like making cocktail parties in people's living rooms. They've been catering.
Totally. They've totally been doing that. They're on the corner. That's the quinceañera has there. They just look the other way. They've got the conchas.
They bring in big empty 2-liter
Jugs.
Pepsi bottles
Yeah.
full of cocktails. You know,
They've got the barrel of aguas frescas,
Yeah.
but they've added the booze. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not. I would not be at all surprised.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's the kind of stuff I've been trying to like
Find.
recover. You know, male, female, black, white, Asian.
Yeah.
Everybody. Let's get a wider picture of who was actually making drinks.
Because we know, I mean, the Uncle Nearest revelation, we'll say.
Yeah.
But they've done such a great job at marketing that story
Yeah,
and
I
getting
mean,
it out
the
there.
basis for it might be a little wobbly, but
Wobbly, but you know what? It's still
there
some
were plenty
information.
there were plenty of black distillers though.
Absolutely.
And there were black distillery workers, black master distillers, black distillery owners, very few, but there were.
Yeah, and then you have, like, in California and Hawaii,
Yes.
so many Asians
Oh
behind the
yeah,
scenes.
oh yeah. Well, especially Asian bartenders were legion.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
in Hawaii, there were tons of Asian bootleggers. You know, so there's that.
Exactly, and it's something, you know, I always joke around. I'm like, where are my Latinos at? You know,
Oh,
'cause
there, yeah,
my family
well,
being this
yeah,
in
yeah,
California.
but there's
where are my
there are,
stories?
you know,
and I know there are.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I find out?
Yeah,
about
it's
where
it's
these
hard.
stories?
I mean, the what you need is Latino newspapers.
Yeah.
And you got to go through Latino newspaper archives and find the people. I've tried to find some, but I haven't found as many as I would like. You know, and
they didn't document as much. And I mean, Latino culture especially, I mean, I can't tell you how many families I know where they started bartending. The kids were bartending at the age of 6.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, it was the same in all immigrant.
Because, yeah, it's true.
Italians.
In immigrant
they were
families,
doing
it
the
wasn't
same
a big
thing.
deal.
No, it was like, because it was all kind of for the community and for the family, you know.
Exactly.
And it was like, yeah, kid, get in and do this.
Yeah.
Because that's what your kids were for.
Yeah, I know, because you had them so they could work for you. I mean, come on.
Yeah, they were part. They were part of the family business.
They're either dusting the furniture or they're making.
But
your
also,
drinks.
there's a very strong sense of family that.
Yes.
That you know, my mom's from New England and my dad was Italian.
The Italian.
And the New England side of the family, the sense of family is also strong but very different. And it's sort of expressed very.
I have a German
differently.
and Colombian thing. So
Yeah, the same
similar.
thing. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, the German sense of family is very different.
It's very different than the Colombians, which are like, what? We're dancing and drinking. What are you doing over there?
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to ask you, like, you mentioned already, it's come up that you were always kind of the aficionado of the cocktail, even when you were like punk rock sleeping on floors. So how did that develop for you? Did you just, I mean, when you were young, it was just around the house, we just had nice drinks?
No, my folks didn't drink a lot of cocktails around the house. Occasionally they entertained, and they'd make things like fish house punch, which, you know, that definitely sunk in.
Well, that's something I
and
love.
then, you know,
Nicole Anise,
yeah,
she's bringing
in
up all
Italy,
the women entertainment.
Yeah.
This is how drinks got saved in a lot of places. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would also, like, in Italy, I'd get, like, Fernet Branca when I had a stomach ache and stuff like that.
I mean,
you
that
know.
was something even I do.
Yeah,
German side, Underberg.
Yeah. And so that was definitely there. But beyond that, it was partly going to high school on Long Island, and also I went to boarding school for a year where there was a lot of cocktail drinking. There were a lot of wasps.
Yeah.
And so it was a boarding school in New England. And
So it was 16-year-olds drinking gimlets?
Yeah, very much so. Actually, tequila sunrises we were drinking a lot of.
I would say that was the 70s then.
Yeah,
right?
it was the
So,
70s. Yeah, it was 1976. And
my God.
but after that, I was a huge reader, and which is why I'm a writer now. And I would read
Sucks you in.
P.G. Woodhouse with Bertie Wooster drinking cocktails, and Raymond Chandler drinking cocktails. And,
I wrote my thesis on Raymond Chandler. Kind of adjacent, but yes.
There you go. So, and so the cocktail culture was there and the stuff I knew. So when I saw it, I was like, I know about that drink.
And it was romantic too. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was.
It
was exciting.
I hate to say alcoholism was romantic, but in some cases you didn't realize.
Well,
necessarily
I
what
knew
it
a
was.
bunch of actually pretty dedicated alcoholics, and that took all the romance out of it.
Right. So when you see it in real life, but when you're reading it,
when you're reading it, different.
stories,
especially when you're in high school.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. When you're too young to be a severe alcoholic quite yet,
May 10th. Thank God for the rain, which has helped wash away the garbage and the trash off the sidewalks. I'm working long hours now, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. It's a long hustle, but it keeps me real busy. I can take in $350 a week, sometimes even more when I do it off the meter.
So it was always just there. It was always just a part of you. And
Yep.
then by the time you got the opportunity to write it, you're like, I know this.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Yeah, I knew where to look for references, and where to get quotes from.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So, well, you know what? I think that's probably a good place to wrap this all up. You've
All right.
done such an amazing job. I mean, I know so many people who like imbibe, boom, and then they went with you after that. And that encyclopedia, if people don't tell me
The Oxford Companion to Spirits and Cocktails.
incredible tome.
It's a lot, but
It is a lot.
It's a reference work. You look stuff up, and it sends you to other stuff, and then next thing you know, you're skipping through half the book.
And it's got stories too.
Yeah.
It like interjects and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
There's plenty of stories.
not your
There's
grandparents'
biographies of
encyclopedia.
bartenders, histories of cocktails. There's scientific stuff on
beautiful
like
thing.
aging of spirits and
Yeah.
Distillation. Everything is in there.
It's beautiful. And what is, you mentioned before, what's coming up, a cartoon?
Yeah, the comic book history
It's
of
going
the
to be
cocktail.
a comic book? Wait.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Okay,
It's not a
what it
graphic
is-
novel.
Well, it's not a novel because it's history.
Okay.
So, but it's in the style of a graphic novel. So it's fully illustrated, full color.
That's amazing.
Lettered, and from the beginning to now.
That's so cool.
I hope so.
That sounds really fun.
Let's hope. I mean, it was a nightmare to write. It was very hard to write.
I bet it was probably tricky.
It was tricky.
For sure. Are there recipes in there too? Or is it
Yeah,
more
of course there
history?
are.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say, just making sure.
Yeah, there are recipes, and I created a couple bartenders to walk you through the
through the thing?
Yeah, and,
That's incredible.
And there's all kinds of unheard of stories, and
That's awesome. I love that. I'm so excited for that. My brother's an animator. Our family falls into that.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That kind of nerdy side of things.
Well, tell them it would make a great movie.
Oh, hey, all right. I'll pass it
and,
on to those folks. That would be.
I'm perfectly willing to sell the movie rights.
You're like, got a mortgage, bitches.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a screenwriter also, although a failed one, but nonetheless.
There's a lot of those out there.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're in good
Most
company,
of them.
honestly.
Yeah. I'm not bitter about it. I did it with my friend for a number of years. We came close, but
Well, hey, maybe this is the one since animation is still out there. Okay, so there's a question I always ask my bartenders at the end, and it is like if you had named a cocktail after a song or a band or anything like that. And so I kind of want to ask you, since you haven't been behind the bar in that sense, but all of this, if there's like
I've done a fair amount of bartending.
of guest
actually.
bartending.
Yeah, guest bartending,
Yeah.
working shifts. And
I've been forced to guest bartend at my bar, and I was like, oh, what? No,
I try not to do it anymore because it's too hard work. But I did it for a while there. I was doing it very often.
Yeah. Well, so then, did you ever have the opportunity to name a cocktail after a song or an artist?
Oh yeah, I've gotten several actually.
Oh well, if you remember them.
Okay, the Big Youth is after my.
See, I think Sonic Youth because of my.
No,
90s,
this is after my
but
favorite reggae guy.
Oh.
Big Ute. Big Youth was the best. Let me see. I've got the.
You still have the specs on your
I've
phone
got the
somewhere.
specs on my phone here. So like everybody, I've outsourced my whole brain to here. And let me see if I can find this. But yeah, the Big Youth. I saw him at the Ritz in New York in 1980.
Wow. It was still when the punk and the reggae were intertwined.
1981, and it was one of the most radiant shows I've ever seen.
Oh, that's
Unbelievable.
Well, just to
So
have reggae
good.
bands coming here at that time.
Yeah, he was. He was one of the really cool stars of the business. But there it is, the Big Ute. Okay.
Is it UTE?
Y-O-U-T-H.
Okay. So it's youth,
yeah.
but pronounced Ute because you're proper.
Yeah. So it's 1.5 ounces Smith and Cross rum.
Of course.
Jamaican, because he's from Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
3/4 of an ounce each of sweetened condensed milk and coconut water.
My Colombian roots are loving the condensed
I
milk.
say yay dashes ango, however many you want. And shake, strain up, and nutmeg on top.
That is so simple and so delicious.
It's so delicious.
That sounds amazing.
Because the rum is rich, strong, and funky.
Yeah.
And the coconut water cuts the condensed milk.
I was going to say it breaks it down.
Yeah, but the condensed milk is one of the great unknown cocktail ingredients.
Condensed milk comes up. Well, I like to make oh my God, I'm forgetting right now. Puerto Rican
like coquito?
Christmas coquitos. Thank you.
It's good for
my
that.
good friend Marie King makes my favorite coquito. So she was kind enough to give me her recipe. So every year I will make that and take it home for Christmas. So even though our family's Colombian, they don't mind the Puerto Rican snacks. So, and something else I like to ask too is like for you, like what do you want to be listening to and what do you want to be drinking when you're chilling out?
It depends. I've got
so many moods, right?
I've got a really, really wide record collection. So it could be
vinyl,
like
CDs, etc.
Both.
Yeah.
And
do you know how much vinyl you've got up there?
I've got it in the other room. I've got like 3,000 LPs.
That's
4,000,
respectable. Very respectable.
4,000, something like that.
Yeah. See, obviously you don't have to move. I always think about having to move. So
and then I've got even more CDs.
Yeah.
I've got a ton of stuff on CD because I still buy CDs. I don't do streaming because they could take it away from you.
I know. I work in the tech side of the music industry.
You know
and
very
I've
well.
seen it happen. Like it started happening with country music first. And I'm like, this is still one of the biggest streaming.
Yeah.
Gone. Country and Latin are the biggest streamers.
Yeah, gone.
And they just say, you know what? No one cares about this. And they take it away.
So I buy things on hard copy.
I like it. Yeah,
so, it's cheaper than burning them myself and downloading it from streaming and then
I'm staying in a place that's a big, beautiful townhouse and it's very quiet inside. And what I'm yearning for is a turntable in any of the rooms.
Yeah.
So I can put a record on and it can just echo in this cavernous space, and I can hear the warmth of that vinyl.
That would be good.
So, maybe one or two examples of you having time to yourself.
Okay, like sometimes it'll be like Jelly Roll Morton's piano solos from 1925, which are like the most amazing thing you've ever heard. Just like he practically suspends time in some of these, and just plays.
It's still so modern.
It just flows out of him, and he's making it up, and he's just like so proud of his invention. And
what are you drinking?
I'd be drinking, a Sazerac probably with that. But otherwise, it'll be like Fela Kuti or Orchestra Baobab, like African. Like so 70s, good. 80s African music, which I love, or Al Green, or Ann Peebles, or...
You know what I love about what you're listing off right now is there has always been this tie of punk rock, but then like reggae and black music.
Oh, yeah.
Very South black music.
Well, especially like in New York.
Yeah.
In New York, that was a very strong tie. I mean, the punk clubs was where hip-hop came downtown.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I saw all kinds of I saw most of the early hip hop acts because they came downtown.
Yeah, same time
to play at Danceteria where I hung out and I used to play. So
I mean, Beastie Boys infamously or famously were a punk band before they became Beastie Boys because they were into all that stuff. Because New York.
They were on the Flipper tip. You know? I mean, sometimes I'll listen to Flipper. I listen to a whole lot of different stuff. Irish music. I love the Dubliners. I'll listen to, Count Basie's 1937 Decas, which are just the hottest, the hottest things imaginable. The band is just flying.
Yeah.
With Lester Young on tenor. I mean, you can't beat that. It's so good.
Amazing.
And or like during pandemic, it was mostly 1950s jazz, like Textbook, Thelonious Monk. Art Farmer and all these.
You're classier than me. I went full disco during that time.
I had plenty of disco too.
Well, that was during the pandemic. I was like, I need something that's going to cheer me up.
I did a playlist of New York in the 70s, 100 songs, and so it would be
I need to hear that.
Lolita Holloway doing Hit and Run. That would be on there, and Doctor's Orders, Carol Douglas. Real classic New York disco, and
so
also
good.
like Iggy
So
Pop
good.
and the Rolling Stones
Yeah,
who lived
because
in New York.
I mean that was super groovy then
Yeah,
too.
yeah, and the Rolling Stones lived in New York for the whole '70s, and so they were a New York band too. So I put them in there.
You're like counts. It counts.
Yeah, it counts because I mean, you listen to the songs they were making. That was New York music. I'm sorry.
That's incredible.
Goat's Head Soup. That was all New York music.
That's one of my favorite
Yeah,
ones. Honestly,
yeah,
it's
so-
so good.
So I listen to a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, that's the best way because there's so much music
Yeah.
out there. Just like as you've learned over the years, there's so many varieties. There's so much booze out there. in the
Yeah,
world.
and there's so many different
so
ways
much.
of having good drinks.
You can never.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like if you cut yourself off from something, you're doing
Yeah.
yourself a disservice.
I
Give
mean,
it a try.
one of my favorite thinking back, one of my favorite drinking evenings was with a bunch of Peruvian bartenders on the patio of my hotel where we went to the convenience store and got pisco and ginger ale.
It's perfect.
And
It's
we
that
were just drinking
experience.
pisco and ginger ale and
No.
talking.
When I go to visit my family in Colombia, I always laugh because we're in a town called Cali, which is very
yeah.
very dance centric. My
Yeah,
mom
yeah,
was
yeah,
actually
yeah.
a folkloric ballerina, so everyone there is into the dance. And of course, salsa is massive there,
Yeah.
even though it's not native to there. They're
Yeah.
like, "What, you're dancing? Come here!" And you can go out for the evening, and there will be a performance of salsa. Then they bring you up, but the whole time I will watch my 85-year-old aunt with a super gulp sized beer
Yeah.
and a small bottle of aguardiente. And she just spends her night sipping one,
There you go.
and there she
you
goes.
go.
Right?
There you
And
go.
that's the night. That's
That's
how it goes.
that's how it works.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
You keep on
Yep.
learning as you go.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
all right. Well, where can people find you if they want to follow along with
Mostly, I'm still, God help me, on Twitter, as I insist on calling it, under David Wondrich, mostly because that's where people know
To
know
find
where
you.
to find me. But
Yeah.
it's not so much fun anymore. I'm also on Blue Sky, but that's a little boring, it turns out. So I need something trashier than that.
We're all finding our new spaces.
I know
Right?
it'll work out, or you can just keep an eye open, or come and meet me at the Brooklyn Inn, or
there you go, and you
so,
bounce around.
yeah.
So that way, if you have, do you have a website or anything,
No.
or no? So people just have to Google you to find out if you've got any speaking engagements coming up
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
future or
Exactly.
anything like that. And I can vouch for if a speaking engagement comes up in your town, go, because you will learn so much, and it is a fun experience.
Well,
So,
bless you. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping it interesting for all
Thank you,
listeners. And thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
I could listen to Dave tell stories for hours, but I will, go and reread his books. And if you don't have that Oxford Companion book of his, which he did with several other people, it's necessary in your cocktail library. That's pretty much all I can say there, as is Imbibe. And look up any of his writings online. Check him out on Twitter if you're still there. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of not anymore, but just, Google the guy. Maybe he'll be coming to a town near you. In the meantime, I do have something of his to offer you. He put together an NYC 1970s slimline playlist. He was talking about it on the show, and he gave us a little sample, which I have posted on the Music and Booze with Mo Spotify profile, so you can check it out. It is so of a time and of a place. And if you want to feel like you're in New York, like late 70s, boom, this is going to do it for you. I just feel so fortunate to have had this opportunity to sit there and chat with Dave. And you know what? He made me a Manhattan before we did this interview. And of course, it was tasty. But guess what? I have another song from A Blind Dog Stares for you. This is a track called The Glow. Music and Booze with Mo is brought to you by The Mermaid, a cozy neighborhood bar with an aquatic flair in the Little Tokyo area of downtown LA. Open 7 days a week, featuring tropical cocktails and snacks, The Mermaid also has a daily happy hour from 5 to 8 p.m. Follow The Mermaid on Instagram at TheMermaidLA to hear about upcoming events and check them out at TheMermaidLA.com. Head to 428 East 2nd Street, Los Angeles for a drink. Thank you for tuning in to our barroom chats on Music and Booze with Mo. For more info about today's guest, or if you want to connect with me, check out my Facebook page, Mo Herms. Please subscribe to the podcast and feel free to tell all your friends about it. While you're there, give the show a rating and a review. It really helps to get the word out. If you want to hear the playlists our guests have curated, search She Be Mo on Spotify, SHEBMO. Find pictures of the interviewees and the cool stuff they create on the Music and Booze with Mo Instagram account. Lower your expectations and join us at the bar. Till next time, cheers.